My name is Emily. I am 32, and I never imagined I would be the person to cut ties with my own family. Throughout my life, I witnessed my parents lavish everything on my sister Megan while I struggled to catch mere fragments of their attention. When my grandfather passed away, they persuaded him to leave me with nothing. Every single cent was left to them and my indulgent sister. For years, I served as their financial fallback, handing over more than $42,000 that I will never get back. Then just last month, my mother sent a message saying, "Mortgage is due." My reply changed everything. I finally summoned the bravery to speak the words I should have voiced years ago. Before I tell you what happened afterward, share where you are watching from in the comments. If you have ever had to face family members who took advantage of you, please like this video and subscribe to hear how I escaped from financial manipulation. Being the oldest daughter in the Wilson household meant a single thing: responsibility. From the age of 10, I was expected to lead by example, earn excellent grades, and assist with my younger sister, Megan. Meanwhile, Megan inhabited a completely different world. I vividly recall my 16th birthday. While my friends received cars and celebrated with grand parties, I was given a practical gift: a calculator for my advanced placement calculus class, along with a lecture about saving money for college. 3 years after that, Megan's 16th birthday involved a weekend stay at an upscale hotel, a wardrobe full of designer clothes, and the very same car I had spent 3 summers working hard to buy for myself. Emily is so responsible. My mother, Susan, would always say. Family connections meant little to her. She did not require extra help. Megan, on the other hand, did. This feeling stayed with me throughout my youth. Whenever I consistently made the honor list, my successes were simply anticipated. When Megan managed to maintain an average in the range of AB minus, my parents organized a celebration dinner. My father, David, was less overt with his favoritism, but supported it through his silence. A reserved man who worked as a civil engineer, he would sometimes slip me $20 when I accomplished something meaningful, a discreet recognition that never turned into true equality at home. The difference became glaring in college. Even though I earned scholarships, I worked 30 hours each week at the campus bookstore to cover the rest of my expenses. Megan started at the same university 3 years later, yet her experience was entirely unlike mine. Our parents covered her full tuition, housing in the most expensive dormitories, and she received a monthly allowance greater than what I earned working. When I questioned this unfairness, my mother's reply was sharp. "You have always been smart with money, Emily. Megan needs more help to thrive." After graduating, I relocated to Chicago and landed an entry-level job at Nelson and Burke, a reputable accounting firm. Those first years were tough. My tiny studio apartment barely held a bed and desk, but it was mine, gained through hard work. I steadily climbed the corporate ranks, forging the financial independence my parents never showed me to expect. It happened during that period when I met Jason at a friend's holiday celebration. He was a software developer with gentle eyes and a realistic view of life. He understood the pain beneath my carefully maintained independence. On our third date, after I had downplayed another story about my family's issues, he told me, "You have every right to be upset about how they treated you." Even though I had distanced myself from my hometown, I still called my parents every week, sent presents for their birthdays and Christmas, and visited during important holidays. Each time, I hoped for some acknowledgement that never arrived. Each time, I left feeling a mix of disappointment and resolve to finally stop seeking their approval. This cycle went on for many years. When Megan left graduate school to explore her true self, my parents supported her financially without hesitation. When she jumped between jobs, quitting whenever responsibilities became overwhelming, they admired her free spirit. Meanwhile, my promotions and accomplishments were met with only brief recognition. Even so, I kept in touch, convincing myself that family was family and things would eventually even out. That illusion was shattered when my grandfather Charles passed away the previous year. Grandpa Charles was unlike my parents. He paid attention to me at family events, asked about my work, and truly listened. He proudly displayed a photo of me at my college graduation on his mantle. When I visited, he would quietly hand me small gifts. Books about accomplished women in business often contain notes saying, "Reminds me of you," written inside. He was the relative who made me feel truly appreciated. When he fell ill, I paused my career to care for him. I managed his medications, drove him to his medical visits, and spent evenings reading aloud while my parents and Megan visited occasionally. During those peaceful moments, he would sometimes gently hold my hand and say, "You are a good egg, Emily. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." So, when I got the call about his death, my sorrow was genuine. I flew home right away, expecting to grieve alongside my family. However, I was soon to realize just how intense the family favoritism was and how it would push me to face the toughest choice of my life. The night before the funeral, sitting alone in my childhood room, I found myself gazing at old pictures of Grandpa Charles and me. In one photo, I was about 7, perched on his lap as he showed me how to fish. In another, he stood proudly beside me at my high school graduation. I traced his face softly with my finger, quietly saying, "I already miss you." I had no idea that the following day would reveal truths that would upend everything I believed about my family and the grandfather I loved so much. The funeral for Grandpa Charles was a solemn event, held at the very church where he had worshipped for more than 50 years. I sat in the front row next to my parents, Megan, receiving sympathies from distant family members and my grandfather's acquaintances. Many came up to me, specifically sharing how Charles had spoken warmly about me and how proud he was of what I had achieved. Each remark deepened my determination to preserve his legacy. 3 days later, we assembled at Franklin Bradley's office, my grandfather's lawyer, for the will's reading. The room was decorated with dark wood furniture and leather chairs, the walls adorned with photos from Franklin's sailing escapades. Over the years, my grandfather had mentioned more than once that he had made provisions for me in his will. While I did not anticipate a great fortune, his assurance offered solace, a final confirmation of our close connection. Before starting, Franklin said while adjusting his glasses, "I want to offer my sympathies. Charles was more than a client, he was a friend." As Franklin began reciting the usual legal introduction, I noticed my mother and Megan exchanging looks. Something in their expressions made my heart clench. To my daughter Susan and her spouse David, I bequeath my home and all its belongings, assessed at approximately $320,000. My parents reacted without surprise. To my granddaughter, Megan, I leave my investment portfolio, currently valued at $175,000, and my collection of rare coins worth $42,000. Megan grinned, clasping my mother's hand. To my granddaughter, Emily, Franklin continued, peering at me over his spectacles, I leave a collection of books, especially those we talked about when we were together, along with my fishing gear that gave us so much happiness on our trips. I expected more, but Franklin had already moved on to smaller gifts for relatives far away. The room seemed to spin around me. Books and fishing equipment, nothing else. Is that really all? I asked once Franklin finished, my voice surprisingly hollow to my own ears. Franklin appeared uneasy. Yes, that is the full extent of your grandfather's inheritance to you. But that cannot be true, I insisted. He assured me he had provided for me in his will. My mother cleared her throat. Emily, this is neither the time nor the place. Franklin shuffled through his papers. I should mention this will was revised about 8 months ago. The earlier version had a different allocation, but Charles was mentally competent when he made these updates. 8 months ago, while working 60-hour weeks in Chicago and my parents visiting my grandfather daily, the drive back from the lawyer's office was a haze. I opted out of the family lunch, claiming urgent work calls awaited me. Instead, I headed to Lakeside Park, where Grandpa Charles taught me how to fish. Sitting on our favorite bench, I finally allowed the tears to flow. Not for the money itself, but for what it symbolized. Even my grandfather, in the end, had favored Megan over me. My phone rang. It was Stephanie, my closest friend since college. "How did it go?" she asked. "They took everything," I replied. My voice trembled as I said, "Mom, Dad, Megan." I grabbed his books and fishing equipment. A moment of silence followed. Then I added, "Oh, Emily. He changed his will 8 months ago. They must have influenced him somehow." "Are you certain? That does not seem like the grandfather you told me about." I admitted, "I do not know what to believe anymore, but I am going to find out." That evening, I drove to my parents' house with a strong determination to uncover the truth. When I arrived, I found them and Megan in the living room, already planning how to manage the inheritance. I spoke from the doorway. "I need to speak with you." My mother glanced up, annoyance flashing across her face. "We thought you had already returned to Chicago." "Not yet," I replied. "I want to understand what happened with Grandpa's will." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "These matters are complicated, Emily. 8 months ago, the will was different." "What changed?" I inquired. Megan rolled her eyes. "Why does it matter? It is already settled." "It matters a great deal to me," I insisted. "He told me he had made provisions for me." My mother stood. "Your grandfather realized Megan needs financial support more than you do. You have your career and stability. Megan is still trying to figure out her way." Figuring out her way? She is 29 years old. When will she start taking responsibility for herself? That is unfair. My father interrupted. "Your sister faces different challenges." "Like what? Being spoiled her whole life? Having everything given to her?" Megan's face turned red. "Just because you chose to be a corporate. Being a follower does not mean I have to copy your dull life decisions. We have been backing Megan as she searches through her possibilities." My mother added, "The inheritance will provide her with a solid starting point. And what about me? Did I not deserve something from Grandpa?" My mother's face turned stern. "You were always careful with money, Emily. You don't require assistance." Those words echoed from my childhood, striking me as if they were a harsh blow. My financial independence, born out of necessity instead of choice, had once again been turned against me as a weapon. "Did you speak with Grandpa about altering his will?" I asked without hesitation. The brief glance exchanged between my parents was all the confirmation I needed. "We discussed the family's needs with him," my father admitted. "As parents, we must think about what serves the best interest of both of our children. Both." "When have you ever thought about what is best for me?" "That is not fair," my mother snapped back. "We have always supported you." I laughed with bitterness. "Supported me when I worked throughout college while you covered Megan's expenses, when I created my career without any help, or maybe when I repeatedly assisted you during your financial crises." The room became silent. "Financial crises?" Megan questioned, puzzled. I turned toward her. "You had no idea? Our parents have been asking me for money for years. That is why I am good with money because I have always had to be to support not only myself, but all of you. The truth hung heavily in the air as I walked away. I stepped outside, closing the door firmly behind me. Sitting in the rental car, I grabbed the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned pale, at last confronting a truth I had been dodging for years. My family had taken advantage of me, and I had let it happen. The first time my parents asked me for financial aid was 3 years after I relocated to Chicago. I had just been promoted to staff accountant at Nelson and Burke and started to build a modest savings fund. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was cooking dinner in my apartment. Emily, it's Mom. We have a problem. Her tone carried that unique blend of urgency and self-sacrifice I had learned to recognize as a sign of impending bad news. Their problem was their mortgage was 3 months overdue. The bank was threatening to foreclose. They needed $7,800 to catch up and avoid losing their house. Mom explained that my father was between jobs, which caused them to fall behind. I sent them money that very night, tapping into the savings I had set aside for a down payment on my own home. When I asked about how they would repay me, my mother sounded hurt. We are family, Emily. There's no need for formal agreements between us. We will repay you once things get better. But the situation never improved. 6 months later, they requested $2,500 for property taxes, then another $1,800 for a new furnace. Each time, I sent the money without hesitation, and every time their promise to pay me back faded a little more. Megan's financial troubles quickly became just one more demand in a long line of appeals. Her vehicle required repairs totaling $3,200. Her apartment's security deposit was $2,000. Then, a medical expense for $4,500 showed up after an urgent hospital visit when she did not have insurance coverage. Each occasion, my parents reached out to me instead of handling the matter on their own. They would say, Emily is having a hard time right now. You understand how difficult life is for young adults these days. The strange thing was they never seemed to realize I was only 3 years older than Megan. Meanwhile, my personal life was put on pause. The trip to Puerto Rico with Stephanie, which we had been planning for several months, was called off so I could pay my parents' property tax bill. The engagement ring Jason and I had picked out was replaced with a simpler one so I could assist with Megan's medical fees. Jason became more and more uneasy. One evening, after I had spent a long time on the phone with my mother discussing Megan's newest financial emergency, he said, "They are exploiting you." I answered automatically, "They are family. What else am I supposed to do? Let them face hardship. They are grown-ups who repeatedly make poor financial decisions, and they count on you to rescue them, so they have no reason to change their ways." I defended them passionately, although a part of me admitted the truth in his words. That feeling grew stronger with every demand, every unfulfilled promise to repay, and every careless neglect of my own monetary plans. After one particularly intense argument about to set clear limits, I compiled a detailed list showing every loan I had given to my family. The grand total astonished me. It reached $42,385 over a span of 5 years with nothing paid back. Despite realizing this, I kept picking up their calls, kept sending money whenever asked, and held on to the hope that one day they would acknowledge my sacrifices and repay the kindness I had shown. My professional life was moving forward steadily. I progressed from senior accountant to supervisor. My salary grew, but my savings barely changed. Friends around my age were buying houses, traveling abroad, and investing for their futures while I was supporting my family's expenses and postponing my own goals. Their demands always arrived at the worst moments. Whenever I was preparing for an important presentation, My mother would call about a past due electric bill. When Jason and I celebrated our anniversary, Megan would send a message asking for rent help. Their crises consistently overshadowed my priorities. The pressure was subtle, yet powerful. If I hesitated before agreeing to assist, my mother would exhale dramatically. She might say, "I guess we will just have to figure something out. I hoped not to trouble your father with this because of his blood pressure problems." Or Megan would be portrayed as relying on us heavily. But I have to tell her we cannot. She has been so vulnerable lately. The unspoken message was that saying no would cause pain and make me the antagonist in our family story. And so I continued. I kept giving and enabling their reckless financial habits. Jason watched me with an increasing sense of worry. "This cannot go on," he said. "You are sacrificing your tomorrow for people who would never do the same for you." "You don't understand family duty," I said, though my certainty was fading. "I understand healthy relationships," he replied. "This is not one." The tension in our relationship grew heavier because of my family's issues. Jason dreamed of a future with me, a life that might include marriage, maybe children, and financial stability. But that vision was slipping further away as my family sapped my resources. Even so, I kept up the appearance of the successful daughter. I showed up for holidays, brought presents, and endured my parents' boasts about Megan's latest achievements, while they barely acknowledged mine. I smiled through dinners during which Megan talked about trips I could never afford because I was covering her expenses. The mental strain was overwhelming. I was both the family's pride and its ATM, the responsible one who could never do enough, and the selfish one for occasionally doubting the arrangement. Throughout this time, I kept meticulous records of every money transfer, every broken promise, every guilt trip. Not because I believed I would get repaid, but because a part of me needed proof that I was not imagining the unfairness, that my growing bitterness was justified. As my 30th birthday came closer, Jason recommended therapy. "Not because there is something wrong with you," he explained, "but because you deserve guidance while dealing with this situation." At first, I resisted. Therapy seemed like admitting defeat, a sign that I could not manage my family alone. Yet, as another year went by without any improvement in the dynamics, I finally scheduled a meeting with Dr. Jessica Winters, a counselor who focuses on family matters. In her cozy office, surrounded by greenery and soothing paintings, I shared my family history. With every appointment, I recognized patterns that I had been too involved to notice. The financial exploitation was merely one example of a deeper issue. "What you are describing sounds like financial abuse," Dr. Winters mentioned during our third meeting. "Your family has established a system where your assets are seen as shared property, while their belongings remain exclusive. That is not fairness. That is manipulation." The term abuse seemed harsh but fitting. It provided a way to understand years of control and years of giving without receiving in return. As I edged closer to my limit, one last discovery pushed me beyond tolerance, compelling me to make a choice I had postponed for years. This decision would profoundly change my bond with my family and begin my journey to regain control over my life. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly during a usual Sunday call with my mother. I had briefly left brunch with Jason. I answered the call, anticipating the usual updates about neighborhood chatter and Megan's latest activities. "Have you seen Megan's Instagram?" my mother inquired, pride clear in her tone. "The resort in Bali appears stunning." I had not seen it. I had been working 70-hour weeks to finish a major audit for a client. Bali? I thought. Megan was supposed to be looking for a job. "Oh, she will resume the search once she returns," Your father and I felt she deserved a break after her last role did not work out. Her previous position as a marketing assistant lasted exactly 6 weeks before Megan realized it did not match her creative goals. Curious about how she afforded Bali, I asked, though I guessed the answer. Well, she used part of her inheritance from your grandfather, naturally. We thought it was a wise investment in her well being. I ended the call soon after and went back to the table where Jason waited quietly. He glanced at my expression and immediately understood. They spent Grandpa's money to send Megan to Bali, I stated plainly. Last month, they asked me for $1,200 for her job search expenses. Jason reached for my hand. I'm sorry, he said. Later that day, as I browsed through Megan's social media, I found a video that confirmed what I had been unwilling to admit for years. Megan relaxed beside an infinity pool, a cocktail in her hand, speaking to someone off camera. No, I am not worried about money, she laughed. Between mom and dad and Emily? The phrase family ATM stayed in my mind for several days. Although harsh, it was truthful. That was precisely what I had become. The following week, I scheduled appointments with my therapist, Dr. Winters, and a financial consultant named William Thompson, who came recommended by a coworker. I told Dr. Winters, I need to make some adjustments, but I fear I might lose my family entirely. She responded with empathy. Such fears are typical when establishing boundaries with family members. Yet think about this. Are you truly losing relationships, or are you letting go of an illusion built on exploitation? It feels like desertion, I confessed. Emily, parents are meant to guide their children toward independence, not burden them with family finances. You are not deserting them by expecting them to act like adults. Over several meetings, we developed precise phrases for setting limits, prepared for emotional manipulation, and addressed the guilt that threatened to shake my determination. On the other hand, William assisted me with evaluating the financial harm and designing a recovery strategy. Based on your earnings and how much you've provided your family, you should have at least double your current savings, he said while examining my financial records. The silver lining is that you are still young enough to make up for it once you stop the financial bleeding. Together, we formed a plan to immediately halt all financial support. Redirect the support meant for the family toward rebuilding my emergency savings first, then speeding up contributions to my retirement fund, and finally starting to save for a down payment on a house. Emily advised me that it was crucial to safeguard myself. She suggested I create accounts unknown to others and maybe even freeze my credit report to stop anyone from opening accounts under my name. The idea startled me because I believed my family would never do such a thing. I voiced my concern, but Emily's tone was gentle yet resolute. She explained that in her experience, when people are used to having access to someone's finances and suddenly lose it, they might resort to desperate actions. For 2 weeks, I kept revising the email to my family. Jason and Dr. Winters both offered valuable input. The final draft was firm and straightforward, without sounding accusatory. Dear Mom, Dad, and Megan, after much reflection on my own financial state, I must inform you that I can no longer provide any monetary help. The support I have given over the years has compromised my financial well-being, so I need to focus on securing my future. This decision is final. Please honor this boundary by refraining from asking me for funds, whether directly or indirectly. This change takes effect immediately. I cherish our family bond and hope we can continue with mutual respect. Emily, I hesitated for almost an hour with my finger above the send button before pressing it at last. Immediately after, I blocked all. I saved 3 of their phone numbers on my device, giving myself a buffer of 48 hours before the inevitable fallout. Later, I went out to dinner with Jason, marking what felt like both an ending and a new beginning. I am proud of you, he said, raising his glass. This is not easy, but it is necessary. I admitted, I keep expecting the guilt to come, but right now, all I feel is relief. Of course, the guilt would arrive eventually, along with anger, pain, and doubt. Yet at that moment, sitting across from the man who had stood by me through years of family chaos, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life and future. What I did not realize was just how fiercely my family would fight to preserve the old order, and how much resilience I would need to stand firm. The initial reaction to my message was exactly what I had predicted: silence. I pictured my mother reading it, her lips pressed tightly together as she waited for me to back down from the boundary, as I had so many times before. When I unblocked their numbers after 2 days, there were no missed calls, no urgent texts, only silence. They think I will give in, I told Jason during dinner. They are waiting me out. He nodded. That's how it always goes. You make a boundary, they ignore it, and eventually you cave. Not this time, I said with more certainty than I truly felt. The silence lasted exactly 1 week. Then the campaign started. The first sign was a casual message from my mother. Just checking in, sweetheart. I hadn't heard from you for quite some time. There was no reference to my email anywhere, as if it had simply never existed. When I replied with general greetings, but without any financial proposals, the atmosphere changed noticeably. Your father and I discussed the loan you gave us last year, and now we are planning to begin paying it back soon. It was a vague incentive with no clear schedule or amount indicated. Then came the voicemails, each sounding more emotional. Emily, it's Mom. I'm really worried about you. This is unlike you to cut off contact with your family. Please return my call. I hadn't actually stopped communication, only the financial support. Still, in my family's eyes, those two things seemed to be one and the same. My father's attempt was more straightforward. He rang on a Sunday afternoon, his voice rough with unease. Emily, about this email. Your mother is very upset. I realize this is different from before, Dad, but my decision remains unchanged. We are not asking for gifts, Emily. Just family helping family. Dad, I have given over $40,000 to you and Megan in the past 5 years, with none of it paid back. That isn't family helping family. That is a one person supporting 3 grown-ups. There was a deep breath. You have always seen everything in rigid terms. The talk ended without any solution, only a vague hope from my father that I might reconsider. Megan's method was unlike theirs. She waited for 3 weeks and then called late one night, knowing I would be alone since Jason was busy with his usual Tuesday evening gaming session with friends. Emily, I need to talk to you, she said, using the childhood nickname I had not heard in years. What's going on, Megan? I replied, matching her casual tone. I am in a bit of trouble. My credit cards are maxed out, and I have several bills due soon. I was hoping you could help just this once. I cannot do that, Megan. I clearly explained in my email. That was about Mom and Dad, not me, she argued. Besides, this is different. It is an emergency. What kind of emergency exactly? She paused. Well, I must pay rent, and I signed up for this digital marketing course. It is an investment in my future. That is not an emergency. That is poor planning. I am sorry, but my answer remains no. Her voice grew firm. Fine. But you should know that if I fail to pay rent, I will have to move back home. Mom and Dad cannot afford another person right now. The threat was unmistakable. Assist her, or she would become our parents' problem, which would soon turn back into mine. That is a decision you need to make, I said, holding my ground. I love you, but I cannot keep enabling financial irresponsibility." She hung up without another word. The following day, Megan posted a vague yet pointed message on social media about family members who only care about money. Several relatives asked what had happened, and Megan shared a carefully edited version of our situation, portraying herself as the abandoned sister and me as the heartless corporate worker who had. Family loyalty seemed forsaken. I chose not to respond publicly. Instead, I sent the message to Dr. Winters, who reminded me that public humiliation was often used when direct control failed. "Maintain your stance," she urged. "Replying only gives power to their method." For several weeks following my email, the situation worsened considerably. Early one morning, a text from my mother arrived at 7 o'clock. "Mortgage payments are due. We are short by $2,100. Can you transfer today? We promise to repay next month." No respect for my limits, no explanation for the deficit, just the assumption that I would always comply. I inhaled deeply and answered with a reply I had rehearsed with Dr. Winters. "I am sorry to hear of your difficulties, but as I mentioned in my message, I am no longer able to provide financial help." The reply came swiftly. "This is not like you, Emily. We are family. We need your support." I switched off my phone and went to work, focusing on the important client presentation scheduled for that morning. At lunchtime, I checked my messages to find 17 texts and voicemails from both parents, each expressing greater desperation than before. "Please, Emily, the house is at risk. Your father's health is fragile. This tension is harmful to him. I never imagined my own child would abandon us." The last message came from my father and was more commanding. "We must have a family meeting this Sunday at 2 o'clock at our home. No discussion." Before agreeing to go, I sought advice from Jason and Dr. Winters. Both urged me to be very cautious. "This clearly looks like a setup," Jason warned. "They intend to team up against you." "I can deal with it," I reassured him. "I need to confront this face to face once and for all." Sunday came with a heavy feeling twisting in my stomach. Upon arriving at my parents' place, I spotted several unfamiliar cars in the driveway. My Aunt Patricia's sedan, my Uncle George's SUV, and even my cousin Michael's motorcycle. Inside, the living room was arranged like an intervention. Chairs forming a circle, serious expressions everywhere. My parents sat side by side on the couch, Megan next to them, her eyes red, as though she had been crying. "Emily," my mother began in a formal tone, "we gathered the family because we are deeply concerned about your recent behavior." Aunt Patricia agreed. "We worry about you, dear." I stayed standing, suddenly realizing exactly what this was about. This was not genuine concern for me. It was a scheme to pressure me into sustaining financially 3 healthy adults. My father cleared his throat. "That is not fair, Emily. We have supported you all your life." "Have you, though?" "Because from my perspective, I have been the one supporting all of you for years while putting my own dreams on hold." Uncle George leaned forward. "Susan told me you refused to contribute to their mortgage. Is that true?" "Yes," I responded plainly. After years of offering financial help with no repayment, I had to draw the line. "But they might lose their home," Aunt Patricia interrupted. "They came into a significant inheritance from Grandpa just a few months ago." I asked, "What exactly happened to that money?" A tense quiet settled over the room. My mother looked at Megan, who suddenly became mesmerized by the carpet. "We had some expenses," my father responded vaguely. "Like Megan's trip to Bali, perhaps?" I inquired. "Or maybe the new kitchen renovation that I noticed when I entered today." More silence followed. I decided to speak the truth boldly. You spent it just like you spend everything else without any thought for the future. And now you expect me to rescue you once again. That is not fair, Megan said softly. Is it? You called me the family ATM in your Bali video, Megan. Was that fair? My mother gasped. She insisted she would never say such a thing. I calmly replied, I have the video. I can show it right now if you want. No one accepted the offer. Emily, my father said firmly, using the commanding tone he used when I was a child. This has gone far enough. We are your parents. We need your support. Either you assist your family or— he stopped, but the meaning was clear. Or I am no longer part of this family. Isn't that what happened when you persuaded Grandpa to remove me from his will? When you decided Megan should receive his money instead of me? Another awkward silence followed. That was different, my mother finally said. We had to protect Megan's future. And what about my future? Who had managed that? You have always been able to look after yourself, she answered. And there it was, the core truth of our family dynamic. My independence had been used against me throughout my life. Because I had the ability to survive without their help, it was assumed I should. Since Megan could not, or chose not to, she received everything. I glanced around at the family gathered in that room, seeing clearly for the first time just how deeply rooted the dysfunction was. This was not something that could be fixed with a single confrontation. Maybe it never would be. I am leaving now, I said softly. My decision is final. I will no longer give financial aid to any of you going forward. If that means I am no longer welcome here, then I will have to accept the consequences. As I headed to the door, my mother called out, her voice trembling. Emily, please. The mortgage payment is due tomorrow. There is nowhere else we can turn. I stopped at the doorway, a lifetime of conditioning urging me to turn back, to solve their issues, to be the dependable one once more. But something inside me had changed. The guilt lingered, but alongside it was a new clarity. It was time for my final reply, the words that would alter everything. Standing at the entrance of my parents' home, surrounded by family members pressing me to continue financial support, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. Years of anxiety over family acceptance and guilt faded in that moment. The fear of setting boundaries and being abruptly shut out suddenly felt distant and insignificant. I turned slowly to face my mother, whose look shifted between anger and desperation. You already excluded me from your inheritance, I stated calmly. Consider this my inheritance to myself. The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the sound of my footsteps as I left the house and headed toward my car. My hands remained steady as I started the engine and drove away from the home where I grew up, away from the family that took so much and gave so little in return. The turmoil started within the hour. My phone flooded with notifications. First came my mother's tearful voicemail, wavering between pleading and blaming. How could you say something so harsh? After all we have done for you, please, Emily, we need you. We are going to lose everything. My father's messages were shorter and angrier. Your behavior today was unacceptable. When you decide to apologize, we can talk. Megan's approach was even more straightforward, a string of increasingly menacing texts. You have really crossed the line now. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad might have to visit the emergency room. His blood pressure is dangerously high. If they lose the house, it will be your fault. I hope you can live with that. Everyone in the family knows what you did. No one is on your side. The last message made me hesitate. Was it true? Did the entire extended family view me as the villain? I pushed the thought away. My image was shaped by a carefully constructed story from my parents and sister, one that cast me as the ungrateful child who deserted her family in their hour of distress instead of the exploited caretaker who finally established a healthy boundary. Predictably, the flying monkeys showed up next. Calls and messages from extended relatives arrived. Some showed concern, while others blamed me. Your mother is heartbroken, Emily. There must be some compromise. Family supports family. That is how we were brought up. I never thought you could be so cold. With every message, my determination grew stronger instead of faltering. I put into practice the plan Dr. Winters and I had prepared for precisely this situation. First, I temporarily blocked all family members to give myself the breathing room to process everything. I created email filters that directed all family communications to a separate folder I could check only when I felt ready. I also adjusted the privacy settings on my social networks and deactivated the accounts that were the epicenter of the drama for the time being. Then, I reached out to my support network. Jason came by with takeout and a comforting presence. Stephanie called with uplifting words. Coworkers invited me out for dinner, offering moments of normalcy amid the family turmoil. About a week after the conflict erupted, I got an unexpected call from Aunt Patricia. I answered with caution. Emily, this is your aunt. Please don't hang up. I am listening. I said, carefully. I want to apologize, she told me, catching me off guard. When I first arrived at that family gathering, I did not fully grasp the circumstances. I had been speaking with your mother for several years regarding her hopes for you, but I had not comprehended just how severe the situation had become. Have you? Yes. After your departure, the situation intensified. Your mother, in her moment of distress, confessed certain truths that revealed a vastly different reality from what she had previously conveyed to us. I want you to understand that I stand by your choice to establish clear limits. Her words felt like a rescue line tossed into turbulent seas. I was no longer isolated. Not everyone in the family saw me as the antagonist. A few days afterward, another unexpected message appeared. A text from my cousin, Michael, said, Hey, Emily, just wanted to let you know I understand. They treated me the same way several years ago when I received my bonus. They never reimbursed me either. Stay strong. These unforeseen supporters offered crucial affirmation at a time I needed it most. Their encouragement strengthened the insights Dr. Winters had shared with me. My view of the event was not skewed. The boundaries I set were fair. I was not alone in facing economic manipulation inside the family. As time went on, I worked through the complicated feelings by writing in my journal, attending therapy, and having lengthy talks with Jason. The sorrow was perhaps the most unexpected feeling, a profound lament for the family I had longed for instead of the one I truly had. It feels as if they have died, I told Dr. Winters during an extremely emotional session, but they are still alive, still sending deceptive messages. Messages kept coming, still attempting to make me feel responsible. You are mourning the loss of an illusion, she said. The illusion that they would eventually change, that one day they would value your sacrifices, and that they would treat you with the same respect they show Megan. That loss is deep and deserves to be mourned. My parents eventually managed to cover their mortgage without my help. Through Aunt Patricia, I discovered they had taken out a personal loan with a very high interest rate, an emergency fix that handled the immediate problem but did nothing to solve the ongoing financial mismanagement. Megan returned home for a while, a situation I suspected would become permanent. Without my financial backing and with her inheritance funds spent, her independent lifestyle was no longer possible. The hardest part was realizing they still failed to understand. In their version of events, I was the villain, the daughter who deserted her family when they needed her most. They could not or would not acknowledge the years of one-sided support, the exploitation of my success, or the basic unfairness of expecting one child to support three grown adults. Yet, with each week that I maintained firm boundaries, with every financial choice that protected my future instead of their immediate needs, and with every conversation supported by friends and family, I felt increasingly determined. The guilt faded, replaced by a growing feeling of strength and clarity. Peace, fairness, and finally a sense of justice came after a long wait. 6 months following that pivotal family meeting, I received a letter from my father. Unlike his earlier attempts filled with emotional pressure, this letter was thoughtful, almost modest in tone. Emily, he wrote, I have spent a great deal of time reflecting. Although I still do not agree with the way you managed this situation, I am starting to grasp why you believed you had to take such extreme actions. Your mother and I are making some changes. It is not simple at our age, but we are trying. I hope that one day we can repair what has been damaged between us. It was not an apology, not exactly, yet it was a recognition, a cautious move toward the possibility of reconciliation on healthier grounds. Regarding Megan, her silence remained unbroken. Among all the family connections, hers would probably be the slowest to mend, if it ever did. Her identity was deeply rooted in being the favored child, the one who deserved special attention and support. My choice to step away from that pattern threatened her sense of self at its core. For the first time as an adult, I was living free from the constant burden of family financial crises, without the guilt of never measuring up, without the bitterness caused by unfair treatment. I was creating a future based on my own values instead of compensating for my family's poor decisions. The single response that changed everything, that finally ended the cycle of exploitation, still resonated clearly in my mind. In moments of uncertainty, I repeated to myself that I had already been cut out of the inheritance. So I decided to consider this my own legacy. It was never solely about money. It represented my self-worth, my value, and the essential right to put my own well-being first. It was about reclaiming a life that had been paused for far too long. Despite the hurt, the continuing family turmoil, and the unresolved connections, I felt absolutely certain that I had taken the right step. The legacy I gave myself, the gift of boundaries and self-respect, was far more precious than any sum my grandfather could have bequeathed. Half a year after setting clear financial limits with my family, I found myself standing in the kitchen of my brand new condo, watching the morning sunlight pour through windows that were mine alone in a home I had bought with my own money. Jason leaned on the counter, holding a coffee mug, smiling at me. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I replied, "How much everything has changed. A year ago, I never would have pictured this. The transformation has been both deep and practical. Without the constant burden of supporting my family, my financial situation improved significantly. The promotion to senior manager at Nelson and Burke, which took place 3 months earlier, finally helped me reach the savings goals that David had encouraged me to set. This condo, a sleek 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I had dreamed of, was my proof of progress. What once seemed completely out of my grasp now stood as a tangible symbol of my newly gained financial freedom. Every item of furniture and every decorative element was selected deliberately, reflecting thoughtful choices rather than acts of desperation or compromise. My bond with Jason had grown stronger during the family crisis. He remained my steady anchor, offering unwavering support without criticism and honoring my decisions even when they were tough to make. The little velvet box tucked away in my desk drawer, waiting for the perfect moment to ask, was a testament to the trust I had in our future together. Regarding my family, the circumstances had shifted in ways I had not anticipated. Communication was reestablished, though under entirely new conditions. After 4 months of sporadic contact, I proposed meeting my parents in a neutral setting, suggesting a coffee shop in the city center. Jason joined me for encouragement, but chose to sit at a distance, respecting our privacy while staying close enough to assist if necessary. That initial encounter felt uneasy and awkward. My mother appeared older, the strain of financial adjustments clearly marking her face with fresh lines around her eyes. My father seemed diminished somehow, his usual commanding presence replaced by a tired uncertainty. "You look well," my mother remarked, scrutinizing me intently. I replied, "I am well. How are you?" The cautious exchange of small talk gradually opened the door to more meaningful dialogue. They had been compelled to implement major changes, including dealing with their house as well. Without my financial support, expenses had become overwhelming. They had relocated to a modest townhouse in a less desirable area. My father admitted, "It's an adjustment, but now the mortgage is manageable." Meanwhile, my mother had accepted a part-time role as an administrative assistant, her first employment in more than 20 years. She mentioned, "The hours are reasonable and the extra income really helps." Her voice carrying a sense of pride I had never sensed before. I set clear boundaries for our renewed relationship. We could meet in public settings and talk on the phone at agreed-upon times. Financial matters were off limits unless they concerned their progress toward self-sufficiency. Any breach of these rules would result in another period of no contact. They agreed to these terms, perhaps because they had no alternative or because they were beginning to realize the harm their past actions caused. Whatever the reason, our interactions now rested on mutual respect instead of exploitation. Megan's path proved to be more complex. After moving back home, she went through phases of resentment, blame, and eventually a reluctant acceptance of the new situation. When my parents downsized, she was compelled to find her own place to live and a steady job for the first time as an adult. Unexpectedly, she rose to the occasion. Through a connection, she landed a job as an assistant at a small marketing company. This marked a turning point in her journey toward independence and responsibility. The salary was modest, and the job was demanding, yet she had kept it for 4 months now, longer than any previous position. Our relationship stayed tense, but a tentative reconciliation began when I received an unexpected message. "I got my first raise today. Did it all on my own." This simple recognition of her own ability and the pride that came from earning success, rather than receiving handouts, hinted at a change in her outlook, a glimpse of the independent adult she could become. The most surprising change was the deepening of connections with extended family. Aunt Patricia had become a steady presence in my life. Our Sunday phone calls turned into a genuine source of connection. Cousin Michael and I started meeting for dinner each month, sharing stories and support. These relationships, once overshadowed by the intensity of my immediate family struggles, now thrived in the healthier emotional environment I had fostered. Regarding my grandfather's legacy, I had found peace as well. The books he left behind, once painful reminders of being disinherited, now proudly occupied a place in my new home office. His fishing equipment, carefully restored, hung on the wall in the guest bedroom. These tokens, initially seeming like mere tokens of consolation, had transformed into cherished links to the man who recognized my value when many others did not. "We should invite Stephanie and David over for dinner this weekend," Jason suggested, pulling me back into the here and now. Celebrating the new home properly sounds just right. I agreed in my mind, imagining the menu and savoring the luxury of hosting friends in a space that felt genuinely mine. Later that evening, as Jason and I talked about our plans, I experienced a sense of hope that had been missing throughout the years of financial ties with my family. "I have been considering launching my own firm," I confessed. a small accounting company dedicated to helping women gain financial independence. It combines my professional expertise with my personal experiences. You would excel at that, Jason responded. And with your client base and reputation, the timing could be perfect. It is a gamble, I admitted. The most rewarding things often are, he said, gently squeezing my hand. If anyone understands managing risk thoughtfully, it's you. As we explored different business approaches and schedules, I saw just how much my mindset had evolved. A year ago, starting such a venture was unthinkable, not just financially, but also mentally. The ongoing pressure from family responsibilities had left no room for my own ambitions, no strength to build a future in line with my principles. The limits I had set myself, though difficult to uphold, had opened the door to growth, to opportunities, to a life shaped by choice rather than duty. The inheritance I granted myself, the gift of both financial and emotional independence, had become my foundation. The results I achieved surpassed anything I had ever imagined. As I looked around the home I had built, at the partner who stood by me, and at the path unfolding ahead, I was filled with a deep sense of gratitude. It was not for what had been taken away from me, but for the inner strength I had discovered to take back what was mine. This was my true inheritance, earned through bravery and setting limits, through refusing to be exploited and choosing self-worth instead. The legacy I intended to create was born not from inherited wealth, but from principles held firm amid hardship. This was my life, finally and authentically mine. What would you do if you found yourself in my position? Have you ever had to establish tough boundaries with family members who tried to take advantage of you financially? Share your story in the comments below. If my experience resonated with you, please press the like button and subscribe for more genuine stories about standing up for yourself. And if you know someone facing similar family struggles, share this video with them. Sometimes just knowing we are not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for being part of my journey. Remember, it is never too late to build healthy boundaries and take back control of your life.